In this video I'm going to show you how to use the Vanquish Photoshop action. So there's a few examples of the effect here. I'm just going to click through them now. So I went from this to this. So it basically creates like this vapor, so I don't know, smoky effect, and you can choose 5 different directions. You can go left, right, up, down, or middle. So let's go through a few more examples. So this motorbike here, I chose the up direction, so you can see the effect growing up there. Next, again, I chose the right direction, and the action comes with 15 color options as well, which I'll show you how to use. Left direction, right again. That one there is the middle direction, so it all sort of just grows out from the middle. Here's another up one, so just scroll up here. And that one. Okay, so I'll close all these down, and I'm going to open up the photo that I'm going to work with, which is this one. And what I'm going to do for this tutorial is I'm going to get the effect to grow out in the right direction. So a few things we need to just make sure of before running the action, just to make sure you don't get any errors. So firstly, look into your layer panel and make sure that your photo layer is set as the background. So it needs to look like this, that background text with lock symbol. You can't just call this layer background, it needs to be set. So for example, if you open up your photo and it's called something else, just go to layer, new, background from layer, and it sets it as a background. Still in the layer panel, go to the top right hand corner icon, go to panel options. Right down the bottom here, make sure add copy to copy layers and groups is selected. Click OK. Next, go to image mode. Make sure in RGB color mode and 8 bits a channel is selected. And lastly, try to work with a good size photo. So this example is 1600 by 2500. Now this action does use quite a bit of memory when it's playing back. So I've got 8 gig of RAM installed on my computer, and if you're planning on using this action on photos, say over 3500 pixels, I would recommend having 12 gigs of RAM installed or more. But for this action, I wouldn't run it on a computer with like 4 gig of RAM, because it is really memory intensive action. Okay, so I'll close that. Now what I need to do is, firstly, because I want this effect to grow out to the right, I want to have more room on the right hand side to show off the effect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to image canvas size, and I'm going to select this one because I want it to grow out to the right here. And in the width, I want to add, say, 2000 pixels. Zoom out a bit here, so you can see I've added a lot more space now, so a lot more room for the effect to grow out. Now I want to just clean up this background a bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit M, grab my marquee tool, and I'm going to just drag a selection over this area. I'm going to hit Control T to transform that selection, or Command T on a Mac, and I'm just going to drag this out, so it's just a quick way for me to fill in that background. So what I need to do now is create a blank layer. So go to Layer, New Layer, and this must be called Brush, all in lowercase. So do that, click OK. And with the brush layer selected, we want to brush over or define the area of our photo that we want to grow all the effects out from. So you can do this a couple ways. You can hit B on the keyboard, grab your brush, just grab any color, and you can start brushing over your photo like that. Or what I actually recommend doing is, rather than defining little areas like this, is to trace around your entire subject, and I'll explain after the action's finished why it's a good idea to do that. So I'm just going to select my background here to make a selection. I'm going to grab the wand tool, and I'm just going to select around my photo here, I'm going to invert that selection, so Control Shift or Command Shift I. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the brush layer, and if I hold down Alt and hit Delete, or Option on the Mac and hit Delete, it'll fill that area with my foreground color, so red. So I'll hit Alt Delete. So it's filled that, so it hasn't filled entirely, so I'm just going to grab my brush now, hit B. I'm just going to quickly fill this in. Foot. Okay, well that's good enough. And okay, so now what we need to do is load the Actions panel. So go to the Window, Actions. It'll pop up here. Go to this top icon and go to Load Actions. Select the Vanquish.a10 file, and it will pop up here, and you can see all the directions to pick from. So that's all you need to do. So what I'm going to do now is just click play on the right action, because I want to grow the effects out to the right. And the action takes about 3 to 4 minutes to play back. Really depends on the size of your photo and the speed of your computer. But I'm just going to click play and then fast forward to get to the result and talk about the ways we can customize the result. Alright, the action's all done, and you can see the effect it's created. So I'm going to minimize the Actions panel, get rid of that, and looking into the layer panel here, the first thing you want to do is collapse all these folders, so we've got a neat workspace. So with the folder that's already selected, when the action's finished, hold down Control, Alt or Command Option on a Mac, click on that arrow on the Vanquish folder, and that just collapses all the folders. Alright, so every time you run this action, and it doesn't matter if you use the same brushed area, you're going to get unique results. So all these textures, all these waveforms are going to be completely different every time. So if you wanted to run the action again to see what result you get, just turn on the brush layer and shift select these two folders, delete them, and then you can play again. Alright, so I'll come back to the color folder. It's fairly simple, just there's 15 color options in there, but I'll come back to that. We'll go straight inside the Vanquish folder, and you can twirl open the waves. So the waves folder has everything like that, and I'll start from the top here and make my way down. So this top layer here is called Photo Crossover. So if I turn that one on and off, you can see what that's doing. So when you've got it off, it basically applies the effect over the entire area that you define. But with it on, so I turn it off. With this layer on, you notice that the effect sort of cuts in and out of your photo. So the way that works is it's basically done through this mask. So if I hide this mask, you just hold down Shift and click on that, you'll see that all this layer is, if I move that around, is a cutout of the area that you brushed, like that. Okay? So what this mask does, if I turn it back on, it hides portions of this photo so that it falls back onto the effect. So if I hold down Alt or Option on the Mac and click on that mask, I can go inside to have a look. So all those areas in white is the area where the smoke, we'll just call it smoke, passes through, and everywhere that's black, it's going to be hidden. So the reason why I've done it this way is that you can actually control, or you can brush over where you want the effect to cross over your subject. So if I select that mask and I'll hit B on the keyboard to get my brush out, if I brush black, sorry, I was meant to say that everywhere in black is where the effect is shown, everywhere it's white it will disappear. So if I grab a black brush and I brush over that mask, you can see that I can brush on where that smoke appears. So if you want to flip between black and white in the panel here, just hit X. See that? See it flipping? So I can brush with white to hide it, like that. So X again. So like down here on the leg, I can brush black so that it crosses over. And a good way to, what I like to do is just quickly hide that layer to see what areas look cool where it's passed over. Like, it looks really cool running from a hand, that wave there. So I'll turn that back on and I'll brush black into that mask so to reveal that. So you can really fine tune where you want the effect to grow out from. So it looks kind of cool up here, top here. Pass through there. So yeah, spend a little bit of time just playing around with this layer, brushing onto that mask, and just be creative where you want that effect to pass through. Okay, so this layer here, waves brightness, is where you can just adjust the brightness of all these waves. So you can just double click on that and play around with this handle. This will make it darker if you drag it in, just like that. This one, drag it in this way and you make it much brighter, just like that. Contrast, this layer is called increase wave contrast. I've got opacity in brackets, so what I'm saying to do there is to adjust the opacity of this layer. So by default it's set to 16, but if I hover over that word opacity, click and drag to the right, you see that I'll go to 0, there's 100, so you start with 0 and you slowly drag to the right and you increase the contrast of all those waves, just like that. So yeah, depending on your photo, it might look really good with contrast up. Others will look awesome, just flat. So this one, just going to add a little bit at 14%. And don't forget, all these layers have masks. So for example, if I turn this to 100, and I'm thinking, okay, this looks really cool down the bottom here. I want to keep it that contrasted, but the rest I don't want it to be that contrasted. What I could do is invert that mask, Control I, so it hides everything. But then I can grab my brush, grab a white brush, and I can brush on where that contrast hits. So I can make it really contrasted here. Yeah, so a lot of control there. Now this layer here, randomize wave color, this is where you can change the color of the waves. So if I double click on this, the first thing you probably want to play around with is the saturation. If I turn this to the right, you see that it fills in those colors much more saturated. You can bring it all the way down. You can have it black and white like that. If you have it black and white, you can drag this lightness down like that so it appears more like smoke. So I'll bring this back up. What you can also do is play around with this hue slider. Drag that around so you get a range of different colors. You can also hit this one here called colorize, and it will fill it with a solid color, and you can play around with the saturation of that, and also play around with the hue to adjust the color. And again, you can play around with the brightness of that. So that's a great way to quickly experiment with different colors. But for this example, I think it looks pretty good how it is. I might just I'll leave it how it is. And another thing to remember actually with this mask again, if you wanted to have this effect sort of trail off with more of that smoke effect, so if I bring this saturation down, bring the lightness down like that, you can use the mask again to control where that smokiness appears. So again, I'll invert it, and then I can brush on where I want this to be more smoky, like that. Okay, so but I don't want that. I'm just going to delete that layer mask. I'm just going to reset this back to normal. Okay, so before getting to these, I'll go back up to the waves folder to talk about the mask that's on it. So by default, yeah, the waves folder is restricted to a certain area. So if I hold down Alt again or Option on a Mac, click on that to go inside, you'll see that I've defined the area where all the effects will appear. So everywhere in white is where the waves are restricted to. So let's click away, just like that. and everywhere that's grey, it's sort of going to taper off. It helps with the the tapering off of the effect. So you'll see that down the bottom here, it fades away nicely. To the right here, fades away nicely. Now, if you hold down Shift, if I just hide that mask, hold down Shift and click on it, you'll see the full effect. So without any tapering off, that's actually the entire effect that's been created. But I set up this mask to help just give it a much softer, the edges sort of taper off much nicer. But what I like to do is preview it in areas that it looks really good, sort of much stronger. So it looks cool down here by the leg and sort of runs down through here, looks really nice. I like the smoke down the bottom. So if you're previewing it like this, take note of areas that look really cool, and then when you click away, it goes back to the original look. But what I can do is select that mask, grab a white brush, and if I brush into that, you can actually bring back those details, just like that. So this tapered off, went all the way down there. Hold down Shift again to have another look. Looks cool up on here. So yeah, play around with that because you want to get into the habit of checking that fairly often. Alright, so moving on down, this layer here, soft cloud overlay, very subtle effect, just overlays a bit of clouds, but a very soft opacity, so you can crank that up a little bit. Just helps give the appearance of depth to different areas. So if you look down here, this dark area down the bottom, I'll bring this opacity back to 0. And as I increase it to the right to increase the opacity, see how it looks like it's giving areas depth, different areas different depths. So you can play around with that. So yeah, it's that one. So these here, these 19 layers are all the waves that help build up the entire effect. So if I turn them all off, you'll see it's essentially all gone. And what you can do, if you want to check out how it's built, you just click on these layers one by one. I'll just do that now. As you can see, there's a whole range of different textures that help build up the overall result. So you don't have to use all these layers. That's just what I've set up for the default result. But you can go down the list here, and wave number 4 is one you'll want to always check on and off because it usually impacts the design in a big way. So what I like to do is just flick these layers on and off and look at areas that you think look better with it on or off. So I like this area of red here, so it's a bit sort of broken up here, but when I turn it on it's more filled in. I prefer that broken up look, so I'm going to select the mask, grab a black brush to brush that away, and I can just remove that. Again, I'll turn that on and off, take a look around. I think that's pretty good how it is. And just get in the habit of like turning off chunks of layers. So I'll turn off these top 3. Take a look at the design. Does it look better with them off? Probably not too much difference. And what you can also play around with is the blending modes of these layers. So like this one, as you click down, just look at the blend mode at the top here. So that one's set to add. What if I turn this one to normal? If I turn it on to normal, it's darkened the design in different areas. Overlay. What was it set to? Add. So you're going to get different results, and you can change the blend mode of all these to really get into adjusting the look. So let's have a look. What else is there? You dodge add. I'll set this to normal. Some you'll change the blend mode. You'll notice it doesn't affect the design that much, but it really depends on your photo. And like I said, each time you run the action, you're going to get a completely different result. So these textures will affect your photo differently, basically each time. But I'm pretty happy with this. I might just brush away some of that around here. Oops, Okay, so what I'm going to do now is change the colors a bit. So I'm going to go up into the color folder, and by default color option 1's turned on. So if I turn that one on and off, you can see that there. So all you need to do with these is you go down and just flick the eye on for that folder. So that's the original colors of the photo right there. So if you want the absolute original colors, just turn that one off. But just start off from the top and, you know, click down, and you know, it says, yeah, there's a bunch of different color looks, you know, the bottom here. And what I like to do is experiment with blending a few together. So I'll start off with the, you know, one I like. So that one looks pretty cool. So then I'll just keep flicking down. That looks pretty good, but I might not want to use that at 100% opacity. So I'll select that folder and I'll drag this opacity to 0, and I'll slowly increase it to the right. Just add a little bit of that color. Going down. Might just use a little bit of this one. I think it's looking pretty good. I might take a look at brushing, take another look at this. I'm actually pretty happy with all that. I'll try playing around with the opacity, the contrast again. I've restricted it to it's pretty good. The colors. So yeah, just spend a bit of time just experimenting with all these. All these layers, turn them on and off, change their blend modes, use the mask. If you want to preview it without the mask, hold down shift to hide it. Some won't do anything, that one just adds a little bit, you can see it there. But a lot, yeah, you have a lot of fun sort of tweaking the look that way. So what I recommend you do after you're sort of happy with the result is if you click on this top layer, this top folder color, and if I hold down Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option on a Mac, what that does, it puts everything that you see on the screen onto one layer. So now I can move the entire design around on one layer like that. So now I can apply, you know, additional effects, and I can sharpen the image up. But what I've been using lately is if you go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. This is a great way to just make some overall adjustments to the design, you know, brightness, contrast. You can adjust the brightness of the shadows, the whites and the blacks. So you'll get this panel here to the right. You can make some quick adjustments, you know, to the temperature. You can make it a bit warmer, a bit cooler. So you play around with that slider there to get something that you're happy with. You can tint your design a different color. So just add just a little bit of purple exposure. What I like to do is just grab this handle from the middle and just wiggle it back and forward. It gives you an idea of what whereabouts it looks right, you know. So just gonna leave it there. Pretty much it was perfect the way it was. Contrast. See, I'm dragging that back and forth, so it looks better with a bit more contrast. You can adjust the brightness of the highlights, so it might be hard for you to see there, but the whites, I can bring the whites all the way down, but I won't, I'll keep it there. The shadows, you can increase the darkness of the shadows. I'm going to bring it up a bit. The whites, probably leave it how it was, and the blacks, I'll leave that. Clarity is like sharpening, so if I turn this all the way to the right, you can see, or it adds a bit of everything, sort of contrast and sharpening. So start off at 0. Some of your images might look better actually reducing the clarity. Like this one looks better with a bit more clarity. Vibrance is like saturation. It will just add more intensity to the colours. You can see that there. I think it's fine. It was saturation. It's probably good as is. Click OK. And then what I like to do is just preview before and after. So if I just hit the visibility for this layer, see I can flick between the original and what I've just done then. So, and what I like to do also is, you might be thinking that that's a bit too much, that's not what you want. You want somewhere in between. So what I'll do is I'll select the layer, change the opacity to 0, and slowly drag to the right to create a blend between this layer that we applied all the camera raw filter effects to, blend it with the original look like that. So happy with that, that's good. So what I want to do now is sharpen my image. So again, I'm going to merge everything visible onto one layer. So again, Control Shift Alt E, Command Shift Option on a Mac. Got that on one layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass, and generally I like to put this on a radius of 2. Click OK, and then select the blending mode and change it to vivid light. And you won't be able to see this too well, but it's actually increased the sharpening quite a lot, particularly through these waves. I'll just hit Control J to duplicate the layer, so you can see that getting really sharp. So what you might want to do is you might just want to sharpen up the waves a lot. So if I hit Control J one more time, those waves are looking quite sharp, but I don't want my subject to be that sharp. So what I could do, I could shift select these 3 layers, hit Control G to group them, so there they are all in the folder. I can add a mask to that folder, and I can brush away the areas where I don't want that sharpening to appear. So I grab a black brush and I can brush that away. And if you want to create some softening between that, you can double click on this mask, and you can increase the feathering of that. So what that's going to do, if I increase it all the way back up, you see how the sharpening, you might not be able to see it too well, but if you look around the face, it's become way more sharp. But if I bring this down, it creates a blend between the area that we brushed. So 100% removing the effect, that's 100% applying effect. So you sort of bring it down from the left to create a blend between the two. So it's just super fine tuning, really. You don't necessarily have to do this. That's it. So finished. I'm just going to preview this before and after. So as you can see, you can save a ton of time using this action if that's the type of effect that you're looking to create. And it's a lot of fun to play around with as well. Alright, so that's pretty much it. That's all there is to know really about how to use it. And if you're stuck with the action, just send me over an email and I'll help you out where I can. If not, I'm sure you have a lot of fun using it. Thanks.